Hello, and welcome to the Age of AI, our series covering the rapid evolution of the AI landscape, exploring what's now, what's next, and how that impacts the world of business and the workplace and individuals and the world. I'm your host, Shelley Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer& Company, and our conversation today is going to center on what is arguably the most important part of success with AI initiatives, and that's data. AI is only as good as the data it can access, and that's why all eyes today are on enterprise data architecture and modernizing that for the AI age. And that's because while AI is rapidly raising the bar for enterprise data platforms, most data architectures just aren't ready. Enterprises are wrestling with fragmented data that's spread across clouds and formats and teams. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And building AI workflows today often means sort of cobbling together brittle pipelines and coordinating across siloed tools and managing tons of sensitive data without consistent governance. So the result of all of these challenges is slower experimentation, increased risk, and delayed results. My guest today is the brilliant Justin Borgman, who's the co-founder and CEO of Starburst. And Justin is laser focused on solving for this. Welcome, Justin. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Shelley. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in this conversation, as I set the stage here, we're going to explore how enterprises can rethink their architecture to meet the moment. Justin's also going to share with us kind of some information about what he and the team at Starburst are doing to remove this friction between data and AI with a Lakeside AI approach, which brings compute to where data lives across cloud, on-prem, without moving it. So, across cloud and on-prem, sorry, not the same thing here, without moving it. And we'll discuss the rise of AI agents, which everybody's focused on today, the future of governed data access, and why next-gen platforms need to be built for hybrid, secure, and scalable AI workloads. Justin, are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, AI is only as good as the data it can access. That's a fundamental truth, and one that I know you've been preaching for a long time, and one that I have been preaching as well. So, what are some of the most critical data-related challenges that you're seeing across enterprises as they try to scale their AI initiatives, and how do you think they need to reframe that approach?
Yeah, well, I think as you accurately said in your opener, it is all about the data.
Yeah.
AI is fundamentally a data problem that needs to be solved. And I think a lot of enterprises, as they're first getting into this, kind of forget the fundamentals. They focus on, what are the latest LLMs or,
Yeah.
the newest technologies or trends around how to build the agent. But at the end of the day, none of that really matters if you don't have the right data to supply the LLM and supply the agent with. And so, we really like to say that data is the rocket fuel for AI, and we want to help customers get governed access to that. And so, to your question, I think that the key things to focus on are really access. So do I have all of the data that I need in order to create a compelling, intelligent agentic experience? Is it governed? Do I have controls in place to ensure that the right data is available to the right person and not the other way around? And then at the end of the day, also, I think cost performance is super important to this whole thing. You don't want your AI strategy to bankrupt you. If you do it right, it's going to become a really integral part of your business. And so you should be thinking early on about cost performance and how your platform's going to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree on all fronts. So I think that another thing that you and I will agree on is that today, most enterprise data platforms, well, of course, they were not designed for AI demands. Okay. And that makes perfect sense. But in your view, what are the top questions as businesses and tech leaders are sort of diving into all things AI and agentic and all of that sort of thing? What kind of things should they be asking to ensure that the AI strategies they're developing are not only sustainable, but, really future ready?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would first start with, again, the data that you're going to leverage. If you're building an agent for some customer facing experience, does this agent have access to all of the data that's going to be relevant for that interaction with that customer? So
Mhm.
really focusing on where the data lives. And I think that one of the things that has been perhaps a mistake over the past few years is a focus on some of these newer cloud data platforms and a desire to sort of centralize that data. But in
Right.
practice, we never actually end up centralizing all of it. And it's actually not even a new phenomenon. I mean, this goes all the way back to the earliest days of data warehousing in the 80s and pursuit of a single source of truth, which
Right.
was always elusive. And so I think it's important for enterprise leaders to take a more pragmatic approach and say, okay, I need data from my product telemetry, I need my web traffic data, I need my
Yeah.
CRM data, and that probably all of that data is not going to live together, especially
Yeah.
if you want timely and fresh data to be informing those experiences. So the first step is just mapping it out, understanding it, and then figuring out how can I provide access controls to all of that data at a fine-grained level, row
Right.
level, column level, data masking, query auditing, understanding what the LLM did, what the agent did in terms of answering that question, being able to go track that lineage of events is also, I think, a critical step. So those would be the things that I would focus on early on. And then, to the point of making sure that your AI strategy doesn't bankrupt you, you should be thinking about where can I leverage open formats, and cheap storage,
Yeah.
and perhaps even move some things back to on-prem. That's a
Yeah.
interesting trend that we're seeing as well to get greater economies of scale on-prem.
Well, and sometimes it's not only just the economies of scale, Justin. Sometimes it's organizations really don't want some of this data to be in the cloud. They feel more comfortable with it being on-prem. So I think we are absolutely seeing a resurgence there, especially in some industries where people do want to keep that on-prem, and that's okay. So solving for that, those different preferences is pretty key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Justin, we partnered together. We did a research study last year. It was actually about this time last year. And, we were looking at the challenges that organizations face on their AI journeys. And a couple of the things actually that customers shared, or the survey respondents shared with us at that time, were that more than 50% of them were struggling with organizing their structured data for machine learning. More than 50% shared that they were facing difficulties in organizing that unstructured data for RAG purposes, and that the most significant barriers that respondents were seeing in terms of getting access to high quality data for their AI projects were data privacy and security concerns, and the massive volume of data that is a reality of most organizations, certainly at the enterprise level. So that study was done about a year ago. Are you seeing the same concerns exist within your customer ecosystem?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't think anything's changed
I
in
don't
that,
either.
other than maybe the urgency to try to solve some of these
Right.
problems in preparation for AI initiatives.
Yeah.
It's become a real board level prerogative or imperative now, to embed AI within your business. It's sort of like everybody's feeling like either we're going to disrupt our industry leveraging AI, or we're going to be disrupted by it,
Right.
by someone else. So there is a great feeling of urgency, and then I think people get held up on some of these fundamental issues that you
Right.
described.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear your answer. My experience is that these struggles remain. I don't know that we've seen a vast reduction in the number of people who are reporting that they're struggling with this. So it's good to hear that your experience is the same. So let's talk a little bit now about, we touched on this a little bit before, but the friction that exists between data and AI. So we know that legacy structures are a reality, and we know that within legacy structures, another reality is that there's silos, great complexity, and of course governance gaps. So what are you and the team at Starburst doing to help eliminate those pain points? And how does that help speed the success of AI initiatives?
Yeah. So a little bit of background for anyone who's not aware. Starburst was formed around an open source project called Trino. And Trino was born out of the internet hyperscalers,
Right.
originally, at Facebook and LinkedIn and many others. And essentially, it's a infinitely scalable, high performance query engine. And what makes that unique is that it's actually not tied to any one particular data source. It can actually span across multiple data sources. It has this concept of federation, meaning that you can join tables that live in two different sources and you can get access to data wherever it lives. And that has turned out to be even more relevant in the era of AI than ever before,
Right.
because fundamentally, again, it's about getting access to the data that you need. And so Starburst, the company, has turned that query engine into a data platform that now incorporates all the elements you need to build your own applications and your own AI agents on top of, and provides governed access to all of the data sources that you may choose to connect to. And so that includes RBAC and ABAC, role-based access control, attribute-based access control, very fine-grained access controls. And that helps you to ensure that only the right data, whether it's for privacy, security, or compliance reasons, is being incorporated and passed through, let's say, to the LLM as part of the application or agentic experience. And in particular, I would say Starburst works with large enterprise customers who tend to be, multinational
Right.
or governed by very strenuous regulations, large banks and so forth. We just announced that, Citibank is now using Starburst enterprise wide. Those types of customers really, really care about compliance and governance.
Right.
And so that's central to what we provide.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So I know that you have introduced the idea of Lakeside AI, which is really all about moving AI closer to where the data lives. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that organizations face in general, right? You've got data in different places, and moving data from one place to the other is really not ideal. But
Yep.
this concept of Lakeside AI, I'm sorry, IDAI, whatever, this concept of Lakeside AI is really all about I mean, it changes the way that enterprise should be thinking about their architecture, I think. Would you kind of unpack that a little bit for me?
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing is that this is kind of the next generation of perhaps what Hadoop started, 10, 15 years ago,
Right,
which was this idea of leveraging inexpensive commodity storage as that storage layer. And then being able to do, inexpensive, highly scalable processing directly on that data. And so we think data lakes and data lake houses are fantastic, and you should leverage them for as much data as you can. But we
right,
also think, to the earlier point of our conversation, that there's going to be data that lives outside of the lake as well. And so we think of the lake as sort of a center of gravity, but not the entirety of all the data that you have. And we want to bridge those two things. So you have the ability to get access to the data wherever it lives. And then we will leverage the lake for storing data that maybe has gone through some degree of processing and is now going to be leveraged for high performance dashboards or specific BI applications. And I'll provide a good example of this in the AI era, which is a desire to do vector search. And so one of the things that we've recently announced is in our product, you can actually create vector embeddings from data that lives in any data source. And we actually store those embeddings in the lake in the Iceberg format. So it's now in the lake in very cheap storage. It's in the Iceberg format. So it's open format that multiple engines can potentially interact with. So you're not locked into a proprietary storage format. And you're now able to do all of that in and around the lake through one platform without having to cobble together multiple
yeah.
types of systems, dedicated vector databases, and performing ETL at every step. We're able to really simplify that architecture in and around the lake.
Oh, I think that's awesome. And that's really, I think to me, Justin, what I see on every front in every conversation is complexity is such a challenge. So solutions that solve for that are so attractive and really not at all hard to say yes to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, so, we can't talk about AI today without talking about agentic. And with the rise of AI agents and autonomous applications, how do you see this disrupting traditional SaaS?
I think this is a storyline that is going to continue to get more and more attention.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is actually some of the SaaS application vendors themselves are now trying to become data companies
Yeah.
along the way,
Yeah.
because I think they recognize that AI is a threat to their business model. I
Sure.
mean, if you can leverage AI to understand, email data and various customer interaction data and
Yeah.
various customer call logs, which are increasingly made available as transcripts now. What do you really need a CRM for in the
Right.
future? Um, and I think what's interesting is while those application providers are now building their own agents, they're missing something really fundamental, which is the ability to get access to data outside of those applications. And it's the
Yeah.
incorporation of that data that's going to create the real competitive advantage when you're building an agent. Now, I'll provide an example just to sort of bring this to life. Maybe within the agent experience, you want to understand your highest value customers based on their usage of a particular feature within your product. So that's an example where the contract value of each of your customers that'll be stored in a traditional CRM, but the product telemetry, which tells you about the usage of various features, how they navigate through the product, how they enter the growth funnel in the first place, generally that lives in a very different database. That's not going to be stored in your CRM, and you really
Right.
need to combine that data. And so this is why data access is so important to creating intelligent agents. To answer that question, you need both your CRM data and your product telemetry data, as an example. And there
Right.
are thousands of those types of use cases where the combination of data is really what creates the intelligence behind the agent itself.
And so tell me what Starburst role is in supporting this emerging agentic model.
Yeah, so we want to be the platform that customers build their own agents on. Hence, the reason we've been adding more features and functionality, like being able to pass data on to LLM. We have these LLM functions. You get to choose your own LLM, so we're not mandating a particular LLM. You have complete choice. We have customers who choose to leverage, Llama 3 on-prem and create an air-gapped agentic experience. You can do that as well. So we want to provide a lot of flexibility to customers. And then what we're also introducing is actually an agent of our own. And this agent will help you explore and navigate your data. You can think of it as kind of like a co-pilot for the data analyst or the data scientist.
Okay.
Um, and we think that will help illustrate the power of what the platform can do. And for some customers, that agent itself may actually be what they use for their own internal analytics purposes.
Oh, very cool. I like it. I like it. I can't wait to try that out. So, your approach, accessing data in place without moving it, seems especially relevant in a hybrid world. Why do you think? I mean, not to cast aspersions on anyone, but a lot of vendors miss the mark here.
Mhm.
And what does your architecture unlock for enterprises who are dealing with the challenge of both on-prem and cloud data? And just kind of walk me through that, if you would.
Yeah, so I think for the past decade, a whole generation of data startups was founded with this belief that all of the data is going to move to the cloud and live in the cloud. And
Right.
so they were built as SaaS platforms exclusively. And I think what's unique about our approach is we kind of bucked the trend, I guess you could say, where we built our initial product as a self-managed product that you could deploy anywhere. And so
Okay.
we've had on-prem and hybrid customers from the beginning of the company 7.5 years ago. And I think that becomes, again, more relevant and more important today as customers are really wrestling with where to deploy that AI infrastructure. And you see, lots of large corporations in particular building their own AI farms, essentially, and buying lots of NVIDIA GPUs, deploying them in their data center, both because of the economies of scale associated with purchasing that hardware and being able to amortize it over time, but also because of privacy, sovereignty, compliance concerns. And I think that data gravity is here to stay. And I think a lot of companies are just ignoring this part of the market today.
Yeah, and I think to me, Justin, a lot of this goes back to cost. Your comment about a lot of SaaS vendors building products. The cloud is it. The cloud is where everything needs to be. The cloud is amazing, and by the way, the cloud is amazing.
Yep.
But there are also, as is the case with many things, what many people realize is that the costs of being only in the cloud can sometimes be prohibitive for companies. And so I think you see people for the last number of years have been stepping back and saying, wait a minute, we're spending way more than we thought we would spend for this amazing solution. And maybe we need to look at hybrid, and maybe we need to consider what needs to stay on-prem. And, and all of this stuff is really cool. We need to make the things happen that we need to make happen, but we need to do it in a way where we can feel comfortable that we can manage the costs, right? And do what we do and still be profitable. And I think the same thing is true really with AI initiatives. And so I think that's what we're seeing here is, stepping back strategically and looking at this and thinking about how can we accomplish what we want to accomplish and do it in a way that, doesn't bankrupt the company.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a lot of evolution in data architecture, Justin, from warehouses to lake houses and now to what you call the Icehouse. How does this architectural evolution reflect where AI workloads are headed? Where are we going?
Yeah, so to build on your previous point, I think cost matters. The economics matter. This is going to become such an integral part of every company on the planet that you really have to think about how do I do this in such a way that is going to be as economical as possible? And I think this is where, again, inexpensive object storage, open formats, and low cost compute are all really critical to the equation. And so the Icehouse, and if anyone of your viewers is interested, we wrote a blog post almost exactly 12 months ago called the Icehouse Manifesto. You can read all about it. It's essentially an iceberg-based lakehouse. And so what we're saying is you should store your data in the iceberg format. The reason you should do that is it is the most widely adopted, most widely supported open format on the planet. It's effectively become the de facto standard. We do support other formats, but we think that is the clear winner from a openness perspective. And storing it in Iceberg means that you truly own the data. It's not a vendor, it's you. It's an open format that you own. And then from there, it's how do I access that cost effectively? How do I manage those Iceberg tables? And that's where we've built our platform to support you. Everything from ingesting the data, maintaining the data, optimizing the Iceberg tables, the data lineage, sort of every aspect of the data management around Iceberg is built into our platform. And then we've always had the leading cost performance engine for executing queries on that format. So that's really what Icehouse is all about. And by the way, it is the architecture that the internet giants already use today. Apple, LinkedIn, you name it. They're always at our open source conferences talking about their architecture. And it is precisely those components built on the Iceberg table format. So that's what we think is one element that is absolutely key to lowering your costs.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So we've covered costs. Now let's talk about those thorny issues like data sovereignty and governance and compliance, especially as we're all focused on trying to scale AI. So walk me through, if you would, Justin, what you're doing at Starburst to help support your enterprise customer needs in areas like role-based access. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. So again, areas like role-based access, air-gapped environments, secure multi-stakeholder collaboration. How are you supporting enterprise needs on those fronts?
Yeah. So, from the earliest days of the company, we've been supporting large financial services institutions
Right.
that are regulated and have to adhere to the strictest compliance standards. And what that's led us to is not only a platform that can deploy on-prem, in the cloud, in hybrid environments, and multi-cloud environments, but also that can deploy across multiple geographies. We find that people who are contending with data sovereignty or data privacy rules may have to keep certain data in certain countries, in certain cloud regions, and we're able to accommodate that because you can actually set up Starburst clusters in any region and all the regions that you operate in, and we'll push the processing to where the data lives, and that allows you to have efficient access to your data, minimize costs associated with data egress charges by various cloud vendors, and manage what you'd like to keep on-prem and in the cloud. So you have a lot of flexibility there from an access perspective. And particularly, we think we're maybe the only ones in the industry that are able to provide this air-gapped experience
Right.
for lake houses that and building your own AI and agents in an air gap manner. And so we have customers who are absolutely doing that today for sensitive applications or sensitive data, and we're able to provide that. In fact, more recently, about a year ago, we began partnering with Dell to make this even easier to consume
Right.
in the on-prem environments. And so Dell now has a Lakehouse product, which is actually powered by Starburst. It's Starburst Inside, and you can buy that in an appliance form factor and just plug it into your air-gapped environment.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's a great alliance that you made there. And for our audience, know that I'm going to link the Icehouse manifesto that Justin mentioned earlier, and I'll also link to the Dell solution there so that you can explore that a little bit more if you'd like to. All right, Justin, as we wrap this episode, I'm going to ask one last question. Look into your crystal ball, looking ahead. What excites you the most about where AI and enterprise data platforms are going? And what do you see? How do you see Starburst shaping that future?
So one of the things that I think is pretty exciting and is gaining momentum right now is this idea of agent to agent communication, that we're going to have increasingly specialized agents, much in the same way we have specialized occupations, right? Each
Right?
of us is deep in our own particular domain. And I think similarly, agents will be developed in that way where and you're already starting to see this, they're purpose-built agents for accounting, for customer support and what have you. And I think the role that we want to play is not only to help those companies build their agents on top of a data platform like Starburst, but also that we can be the agent that provides data access with which other agents can communicate and talk to our agent to get access to the enterprise data that an enterprise has through that governed layer of role-based and attribute-based access controls, and ensuring that any data that is transmitted is compliant and so forth. So I think this is going to be a very interesting future where we're going to see greater specialization and more agent-to-agent communication in the
Yeah.
future.
Awesome. Well, that sounds terrific. Justin, you have been an amazing guest. I knew you would be. And that is it for this episode of The Age of AI, featuring Starburst CEO and co-founder Justin Borgman. I'm your host, Shelley Kramer, principal analyst here at Kramer & Company. Thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned, I'll include some links to some resources, including the study that we did with Starburst on last year, so that you can get your information fix. And if you've not yet hit that subscribe button, right now is a good time to do it. And we'll see you here next time.